Hi there. Okay, I'm Liz Lockman. I'm a filmmaker. And let's see, Amy and Nancy asked me to do a story on equality. I don't really have a story. I just have a bunch of stories and they're all sad. So I told them first I said, no, I can't do it. And they said, why? And I said, because I'm just gonna make everybody cry and that's not fun. And also, I don't have anything really smart to say. They were like, no, that's what we want you for. We need dumb people on this thing to make everybody else look great. So here I am. So anyway, I was thinking about equality and one thing came to mind immediately, so I'm just gonna give you some stories and you can string them together, okay? It'll be like little Christmas lights. So I was shooting my partner, Susan Feniger, who was a chef, and she was opening her solo restaurant called Street. It was street food from around the world. So that meant we had to travel and I had to shoot her tasting global street food. And it was not fun. Because, oh my God.
What?
Okay.
What do you mean it wasn't fun?
I can't get rid of her.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, go away. All right, I'm not going to start over. So anyway, like I said, it involved shooting her. And first we had to get the right stuff to wear. So we went to REI and the guy there kept saying to us, cotton kills. And I kept saying, cotton kills? It sounded very mean. And he said, yes, it doesn't breathe. It's going to keep the moisture next to your skin. You're going to be miserable. You're going to get sick. All kinds of horrible bacteria. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So we bought wick material, synthetic material, and we went on our travels. And we're on a plane in Vietnam. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, all these Vietnamese people are wearing cotton t-shirts. What happened? And so I thought, well, maybe cotton only kills Americans. So that was my new theory. Then we went on another plane and all these American guys are like, hey, dude, and they're all wearing cotton t-shirts. And I'm like, okay, maybe cotton only kills American women. Not good for equality. So that was my theory that I traveled through with Vietnam. So anyway, I wanted to just talk about a few little random stories from when I was a kid, because this really shows how I was raised, and I think how a lot of little girls are raised, or were raised. I think it's changing. But for example, my mother took me in to buy clothing for school, and one of the saleswomen said, good morning, Mrs. Lockman. Did you get your tomboy out of the trees yet? And I was so humiliated. And I thought, what's wrong with trees? And what's a tomboy? So, it was just like, oh my God, that was horrible. Now, little boys don't get told they can't climb trees. Now they do get told they can't play with dolls. But still, there's a lot less rules for little boys than for little girls. And I know that as a little lesbian, I was always trying to figure out the differences because I wanted to be with the boys because it was more fun. And I was more fully realized when I was doing things and playing sports and doing stuff that little girls, it was frowned upon in those days. And so I was trying to figure out how you be female. There was that little test they would do, like, look at your nails. And if you looked at them this way, that was masculine. And if you looked at them this way, that was feminine. Okay, that's bullshit, but whatever. That's what we did to each other. So I figured out that you can't beat your best friend, who's a boy, at wrestling, because he never spoke to me again. I went and we played dodgeball the entire 5th grade, and at the last minute, it was me and Peter Biskey, back and forth, and I won. I ran home, I told my mother, you know what she said? Oh, Liz, you should always let the boys win. That's my mother. That's horrible. She's not a great mother, but she's a great person. But really, that sucks. So that was embarrassing. I thought, oh, I did that bad. And then I was always told, ladies do things a certain way. And be a young lady. You don't cross your legs, because that's not ladylike. You cross your ankles. And you keep your knees together so no one can see up there. And then you cross your ankle. That's what a lady does. And I thought, I hate ladies. I hate ladies. They have no fun. They're in a box, they can't do anything they want. And to this day, I can't stand that word because I think it's just a way that society controls women's behavior. Like, I'm not going to be considered a lady. So I really can't stand it. I mean, gentleman is not the same. Little boys don't get told, oh, you have to be a little gentleman. They don't do that. So I learned in my 20s that ladies don't whistle. Who knew? Whistling is unladylike. Well, maybe it's only on the streets. I could never figure it out. Some doorman in New York City, I was so happy. I was whistling, I'd walk out the door. I'm so joyful. And he goes, ladies don't whistle. They don't? So that was like, oh, humiliation. I feel like there's a lot of things that women do that are curtailing and they don't even realize it. Shaving your legs. Hair on women's legs is bad. Hair on men's legs is fine. Why? I don't know, but I do it because I'm told to, and that's what women do. And I think that women do a lot of things to turn inward, not outward. And that drives me crazy, amongst one of the many things that drives me crazy. And I think that all that inward looking and worried about being judged and fitting in and doing the right stuff and the fashions and all that stuff, I think it's an energy suck. And I think it keeps us from turning toward our aspirations and our dreams and our storytelling and all the things that we do creatively and all the things we do to move ourselves forward in life. And instead we're doing this stuff, well, are my boobs big enough? All that stuff. Mine aren't. But anyway, so I have a problem with all that stuff. And I know that that's not equality in the way politically, but I think it's foundational and I think it's societal and I think it's very important to notice when rules are being applied differently to different genders. So I don't like that. All of that is about trying to be my most authentic self, my fully realized self. And as a filmmaker, I'm trying to tell my stories that are fully realized and not curtail those because someone might not want that or they'll judge it harshly. It's like, no, this is my truth. And there's a place out there for my voice. I noticed that girls and women tend to wait till they know the answer to raise their hand. So like, I have to be really good before I can put myself up for a job. Guys are like, nah, I can do that. And like, they've never done it before in their lives, but they get the opportunity because they said they could. It's an amazing difference in the way that we approach things. So I'm still working on it. I'm still working on fully realizing myself, and I don't think it's going to matter anyway because cotton's going to kill me.
Hi, my name is Fabiola Bagula, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to share my story with the Passionista project. So thank you. This is actually a story about crossing the border, which I did quite often. And it's called Tales from the Hyphen because as a Mexican American, I'm definitely in that space quite a bit. I did write it down, so I apologize if I'm going to be reading it, but that's how I roll. So thank you. So when you grow up in a border town, the other side is just that, the other side. The language, the currency, it's all interchangeable. You don't even reference the countries. The other side just happens to be the side that you're not on. I've read that my city is on the busiest international border in the world. And having spent many hours crossing it, either by car or by foot, I believe it. Going to the other side was so commonplace, and for many quotidian reasons. Let's go see your cousins. We have to go to the other side. Running low on money? Groceries are cheaper over there. Let's cross to the other side. Only don't buy avocados because we can't cross them. Need party favors? Piñatas? Let's go to the other side. The older I got, the less I frequent. My lack of patience for the border wait time, coupled with growing concerns over drug-related violence, has waned my interest. I do miss those days when we would cross simply on a Tuesday evening to get the best possible tacos for dinner. I have deep memories of riding in the back of the car, haggling over piggy banks of the latest fandom caricatures. I got one every year. We would save money for my yearly birthday party. And almost like a ritual, we would break it, count all of our money, go across the border to get the piñata and the candies, and then buy a new one for the following year. If we were really lucky, we would be in the car lane that was close enough to the churrero, and we would get a bag of freshly fried churros. Crossing the border to go home meant our car would inch forward towards the US while we took in a multitude of exhaust fumes. The closest we got to the international border crossing, the quieter it got. The more serious, the quiet down, no more talking, turn the radio off, be serious, no jokes. Do you have all the papers? Stop chit-chatting. If I really didn't listen, there would be an extension of an arm reaching for my leg in the back seat to pinch my calf into submission. The closest we got to the US, the lively nature of the long car ride would dissipate into concern. You could see this transition of behavior, of expectation, joy, fear, and submission. It was almost a metaphorical and physical representation of an immigrant story, from being at home to going to another country and being a minority. We learned that we were at the whim of an international agent that we got by happenstance. You grew to expect the unexpected, understanding that you were at their power will. Having crossed the border so much, I've seen the multitude of spaces you could potentially be sent to. I've seen secondary inspection. I've waited for hours to be questioned. I've seen our car be ransacked. I've seen the inside of all those large buildings. And I've had to translate between officers and my family members. I learned to navigate the intimidation tactics of the agents and the fear of my family, and temper the situation as best as a child could. I had to translate well enough to satisfy the officer and easy enough to not overly concern my family. There was never a rhyme or reason or a particular pattern that my childhood brain could put together. I've seen all of the male figures in my life crumble as we inch across the border. Their loud baritone voices became hushed whispers. Their joviality and masculinity would disappear. My strong-willed, strong-minded uncles, grandfather would become immediately weak. They were scared. I would see their eyes down, quietly answering every question with a yes, sir, or no, sir. I learned that the officers were to be overly respected and immediately feared. As a child, to see the demasculization of all of your important male figures leaves a lasting impression. And my husband, who has never had his nationality questioned, crosses the border cavalierly. His responses to the question I've grown accustomed to border on smartass. And after many times of my flinching out loud, he has learned to honor my concerns. He's never had to prove that he belongs here. He doesn't have the worry and fear I carry etched on my bones. And lately, an old memory that has haunted me like Casper the Friendly Ghost has become a poltergeist. You see, my mama is strong. She raised 2 first-generation college students as a single immigrant mother, and I've only seen her cry very few times. And this is a story about a time that she was wailing in fear, with her hands across her mouth to muffle her cry. But my attention was being demanded from an immigration agent, and I had to choose to ignore my mother's cries and listen to the agent. I don't know the reason why we were in Mexico that night. It was just too commonplace for us to be there, but we were in the car on the way back home, and again, the same ritual. A demanded hush, a preparation of documents, a reminder to answer all of the questions, to be respectful, to be quiet, to don't make any mistakes, with a hope of he just waves us on through. I was sitting in the back seat of a Chevy Nova, adhering to all the crossing the border rules. The agent was waving his flashlight in the back seat with our papers in his hands. And the same question I've answered a multitude of times, what's your citizenship? I'm a US citizen. At that point, he reached into the car and proceeded to lift me out of the car through the window. I heard my mom, ¿Qué está haciendo? Asking my uncle, what's the agent doing? Why is he doing that? Her voice became hysterical, and I could hear tears. And out of the corner of my eye, I remember her eyes affixed to me, her hands across her mouth, and tears rolling down her face. The agent stood in front of me and asked, if you're a US citizen, it means you go to school, right? What's the name of your school? What's your mascot? What's your favorite subject? I answered. I could still hear my mom's muffled tears, but I knew I couldn't look in the car. I knew I had to look at the agent in the eye, not down like my uncles taught me. All my English teachers taught me, you look at Americans in the eye. And I had to answer his questions without any hesitation. If you're a US citizen, it means you know some of our songs. Sing Old MacDonald. sing the ABCs, sing the cow jumped over the moon. There were a couple more, but there I was with the towering agent in full uniform with a flashlight on me at age 6, singing for him, trying to pay attention to what he was asking me to do, wondering if my mom was okay, hoping I'd remember all of the songs he asked for. Why was she crying? And it wasn't until last year, when I saw pictures of children taken from their families and put in cages, that I understood my mother's quiet wail. I was put back in the car. The agent opened the door this time, and we were waved through. There was this sigh of relief. I felt my mother exhale and fully cry, and she held me so tight that night. Now, I have a PhD, and my mom never understood the American public school system, so I never got a full, wow, I'm so proud of you. It was more of how come you're a doctor but you don't work at a hospital? So one day she was over and I had applied to get my global entry card because I love to travel. And when I explained to her what it was, because I was really excited to open up this very official envelope, she started crying, looked at me and said, "I'm so proud of you." And she gave me a hug. At that immediate moment, I got a little mad because I thought, I've worked so hard to be very successful in this country, and you've never said that to me. And this thing that I just got because I filled it out, you're proud of that? But what I'm very proud of that I did at that moment was that I all of a sudden got this flash of understanding that although she doesn't understand the public education system in America, she understands immigration. She understands the level of freedom that card would give me from incidents like this and worry about any future kin. So I'm glad that I had that flash of clarity and not be mad at my mom. So thank you for listening.
I am a white woman with privilege. More precisely, I am a half-Jewish, quarter-Irish, white bisexual trans woman with privilege. In the USA, the Irish were not considered to be white until the late 19th century, nor were Jews until the mid-20th century. But it's absurd to argue that somehow I am not white, as you can plainly see. I was always bisexual and trans, but didn't come out as bi or transition from male to female until age 44, because I was terrified of the consequences of living as my true self. I finally managed to do so because the reality had become much worse than the fearful projection. Like so many trans people, I faced severe depression, anxiety, what I refer to as tranxiety, and ultimately suicidality. Unlike so many, I was able to successfully transition because I could afford it and lived in a city where my life would not be in constant danger, all because of privilege. I was done with lying about who I was merely to survive in this world. Up until then, I was perceived as a heterosexual, cisgender, white male with a hell of a lot of privilege. I am not heterosexual. I am not cisgender. My gender is not male, but I'm still white and I still hold unearned privilege. I lost my male privilege when I transitioned. More on this in a bit. I lost my heterosexual privilege when my same-sex Italian partner and I were forced to leave the U.S. twice in order to live together legally as a couple until the law changed here in 2013. I also lost my cisgender privilege because my partner, now my wife, is also a trans woman, and we have been viewed by our birth and home countries as a same-sex male couple, an opposite-sex couple, and a same-sex female couple, often all at the same time. When we say we are LGBTQ, we are all of those. But I'm still white and I still hold unearned privilege, and I see privilege a lot differently than I used to. And that's why it bothers me so much when I see a rich white woman like J.K. Rowling venting transphobia, right-wing talking points, and junk science to her 14.5 million Twitter followers during this time of powerful Black Lives Matter protests, and I remember that 4 out of every 5 trans women murdered in hate crimes are trans women and sometimes trans men of color. Black lives matter and Black trans lives matter. And I'm confused when Rowling signs a letter decrying cancel culture, then turns around and sues trans people into silence for suggesting that her anti-trans tirades are harmful to trans people, especially children. What do I know about being a woman apart from having known I was one since age 2.5 when my mother told me that cowboys don't pee in their pants? And I responded, I'm not a cowboy, I'm a cowgirl, and cowgirls can pee in their pants. I grew up surrounded by strong, independent women who believed, as so many feminists do, that biology is not destiny. From age 7 onwards, both my mother and stepmother were the primary breadwinners in their respective households and had worked their whole lives, as had my honorary third mother, my Aunt Mimi. So naturally, I became a feminist. My dysphoria around gender continued to grow, but I hid both my sexuality and transsexualism. Unlike so many, I learned at a relatively early age that sex and gender are two very different things. I don't speak for women. I don't speak for trans women. I speak only for myself. I am proud and honored to be a trans woman, to be a woman. I don't insist everybody accept me as a woman, but if you speak against me and endanger my life, I'm not likely to follow you on Twitter or buy your books. Yet Rowling and other famous white people like Graham Linehan, along with right-wing, often white supremacist media pundits, trans-exclusionary radical feminists, and a host of other privileged cisgender folks, claim that trans women are out to erase women and convert others to our supposed cause, a cause that involves hundreds of hours of torturous facial electrolysis, painful surgeries, social ostracizing, medical and psychiatric pathologizing, the loss of family, children, friends, employment and housing, and includes the denial of medical services or insurance coverage, verbal and physical abuse, rape, and primarily for trans people of color, imprisonment and murder. Who could resist? As the first trans psychotherapist at the LA Gay and Lesbian Center, now the LGBT Center, from 2002 to 2008, I worked with hundreds of trans clients, as well as gay, lesbian, straight, and non-binary clients. I worked besides many cisgender, gay, and lesbian therapists. And it's funny, I can't recall transing or erasing a single lesbian, or for that matter, a gay, straight, or bi cis client, or non-binary person. And I don't remember any of the LGB staff doing so either. I don't recall a single client being told they were probably trans or deciding they'd be better off being trans. And I remember one lesbian client who announced a few months into therapy that they had come to believe they were trans. I didn't offer an opinion because that's not what therapists do. And we discussed what this meant to them, and I carefully considered any potential, forgive the expression, transference in our therapy with my supervisors, and allowed the client to arrive at their own conclusions. Other than that, no LGB identified client became trans, and no trans people decided they weren't trans. In fact, in the world at large, it's always the trans people who are being told they're not trans and don't exist or are a fetish or mentally ill. I guess that a lot of LGBT people could relate to that. And since trans people emphatically do not run or oversee the less than wildly experimental World Health Organization, AMA, APA, Tavistock Clinic, or the vast majority of national and worldwide health and mental health organizations, it's almost as if the whole idea of well-trained psychotherapists, doctors, or psychiatrists pressuring adults or children to transition is as fanciful a notion as the mythical powers of the wizards at Rowling's Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Transitioning was never a choice. The only choice was survival over oblivion. There remains overwhelming evidence from biology, psychology, psychiatry, anthropology, and endocrinology arguing that gender identity, like sexual orientation, is hardwired into the brain virtually from conception. As far as trans women erasing cis women, is J.K. Rowling erased? Or is she still out there relentlessly posting anti-trans rhetoric across all media against a dramatically at-risk population? Are the trans exclusionary radical feminists who find common ground with the far right and white supremacists erased? You wouldn't know it from their ongoing attacks in both social and mainstream media. What of the anti-trans LGB folks who reject conversion therapy or pathologizing of sexual diversity for themselves, yet support it for trans children and adults? They're still out there spewing their bile. TERFs see trans women as men in dresses, but also insist that trans men are women. Where is the feminism in that? What about those feminist beliefs that biology is not destiny? What about intersex people who identify as women? What about non-binary people? And what of privileged men such as Pope Francis, who describes trans people as an annihilation of man? Has he been erased? Or President Trump, who, besides passing anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation on a regular basis, has been kind enough to point out how to spot trans women? Apparently, it's the strong jaws, big hands, and facial hair, which will, of course, lead to millions of cisgender and intersex women being outed as being trans, as has happened with increasing frequency over the past 4 years, along with the violence against trans people. Never mind the fact that there are no reported cases of trans women in public restrooms assaulting or raping cis women anywhere, anytime, and virtually none of cisgender heterosexual men dressed as women attacking women there. Why would they need to? By contrast, how many trans women have been assaulted by cis-het men in men's restrooms or trans men chased out of women's restrooms? It's almost as though all these transphobic tropes employed in the cisgender, heterosexual, patriarchal society's misogynistic attacks on non-cis, non-het people as lesser than is remarkably similar to the way real women are treated. So as a trans woman, am I transing or erasing straight or gay cisgender women? Am I betraying and annihilating man and mankind? Or am I just trying to be myself and survive in a hostile world?
My name is Selene Luna. I'm a comic, voiceover, actor, and host. I'm also a disabled rights activist, and in my limber years, I was a dancer. I have faced many obstacles in life. I'm a woman with a disability. I'm a little person. I'm also an immigrant from Mexico. So I'm really humbled to speak with you today. However, I gotta be honest, I really struggled to come up with a story of equality that I could share with you today. As a person with a disability, all I could come up with are sobering examples of discrimination. People like me, and not just women, struggle to survive in a society that openly discriminates against physical, intellectual, and psychiatric disabilities. So when I'm asked to share a story about women's equality, I simply cannot relate because as a person with a disability, being a woman is the least of my challenges. I'm preoccupied with the basic need to be treated as a human being, not my gender or my color. And for people like me, one of our greatest challenges concerning equality is systemic forced poverty. The greatest inequality I've experienced and continue to experience is income disparity. It doesn't matter that I voiced a character in an Oscar-winning film. In fact, this couldn't apply more to the entertainment industry, where little people are rarely ever portrayed as human beings, much less a woman. 1 in 5 Americans have a disability, and polls show that most of them want to work, and that includes me. However, 70% of working age Americans with disabilities are outside the workforce. People with disabilities live in poverty at more than twice the rate of people without disabilities. Our capitalist system is set up to exclude people with disabilities. Sure, there are discrimination laws in place that are supposed to protect us, but don't think for a moment that they're actually enforced. Employers these days are pretty savvy about finding loopholes. For example, when you see a job posting that reads, "must be able to lift 20 pounds," when the primary duties are answering phones and emailing, who do you think that employer is trying to weed out? It is legal in 38 states to pay individuals with disabilities below minimum wage. We don't earn less than men. We earn less than abled men and women. Disabled people in the US with Medicaid are not allowed more than $2,000 in money and assets combined. So basically, if you need life-saving health insurance, you must prove that you live in poverty in order to receive it. These are only a few examples of systemic forced poverty for people with disabilities. How do I know it's a systemic problem? Because studies, both domestic and international, have proven that individuals with disabilities make better employees than those without a disability. Disabled employees stay at jobs longer, a job retention rate of 1.7 years compared to the 0.9 years for abled persons. Employees with disabilities have fewer work-related accidents. We have better safety records at the workplace than workers without a disability because we are cautious when it comes to safety. And that saves businesses a ton of money. Also, we have stronger connections to customers. Employees with disabilities are known to have good human relationships with customers, which only lead to profits. My focus on disabled justice today might seem a bit off topic, but being a feminist means that you fight for the equality of all people. We cannot have equality for all women without equality for all. I implore you to not abandon people with disabilities for the fight for equality. I am devoted to equality for all, and today I call upon you to not leave the most vulnerable behind. For me, equality is about fighting for anyone who needs a voice. Thank you for your solidarity.
Hi, my name is Billy Best, and I'm here today to talk to you about ageism and how it affects women's equality, because I believe it does. And I believe there's a close link between ageism and the way our cultural treatment of menopause is loathsome. I don't think women are going to be able to age equally to men while we consider the natural life process of menopause to be a personal disaster. It's not. Menopause is not a personal disaster. But over the last, 50, 100 years, there has been a diseasification of menopause that has made it really a time in a woman's life that she dreads because she knows ever after she will be considered of less value. That's got to stop. If women are going to be equal, we must overcome ageism. And to overcome ageism, wow, we really have to get a grip on the way we see menopause. In my late 40s, I called my grandmother to ask her about her menopause because my mother had a hysterectomy in 1965. And so she couldn't really tell me about our family's medical history. My grandma was in her 90s when I called, and I just got on the phone with her and was like, hey, Grandma, tell me about menopause. What was your menopause like? There was this big pause, and it seemed like she thought I might be joking. She was surprised. She said, I really don't remember menopause. I couldn't believe it. How could a woman forget her menopause? That would be like forgetting you had cancer. I asked her again, really? Come on, give me some clues. I mean, I'm in your gene pool. My menopause is supposed to be like your menopause. She said, well, it just wasn't that big a deal in the scheme of things. I really don't remember. Maybe I was more nocturnal. That killed me. I mean, menopause is supposed to be this really awful experience that basically destroys women's lives for years, and my grandmother couldn't remember her. That made me think that maybe menopause historically isn't what we think it is today. So I went to Dr. Google to find out more about menopause, and wow. You know, women's medicine is the Area 51 of healthcare. You could believe that menopause was aliens sapping our hormones and destroying our good looks and creating us into sexless hysterics. Or you could believe that a renaissance of Mother Nature is kissing off our reproductive obligations and empowering us with a new sense of freedom and independence. You get to choose what you believe. I really like the idea of menopause as an empowering renaissance in a woman's life. And I know my own experience has been incredible independence. I remember worrying about bleeding on my clothes, and I remember cramps, and I remember the mood swings of menstruation. And I know from my friends who've been pregnant that it's a really big ordeal to put your body through. And when you think about it, menstruation, pregnancy, and menopause have some things in common. Our bodies go wildly out of shape, our fluids go crazy, and our mood swings seem uncontrollable. We surprise ourselves with all the disruptions, and the people around us may find us difficult to handle. That's life in a woman's body. Our entire lives, we're sort of battling these unpredictable fluids. They come and they go. These days, my biggest worry is peeing when I sneeze. I went through menopause 15 years ago, and I'll tell you something, I still have hot flashes. I didn't know I could still have hot flashes 15 years after menopause, but I do. And I've recently been told by women in their 80s that they still have hot flashes. So some of the things that we attribute to menopause are just the conditions of life in a woman's body. And you know what? This is why we're stronger than men. I mean, think about it. An erection only does one thing. Our bodies do all these crazy things, and they're so disruptive and often unpredictable and inconvenient. And we learn to handle them. We manage ourselves. We endure. We figure it out. We go on with our lives. We manage to get an education and have relationships and raise children and have long, successful careers and become brilliant and talented. And we manage it. It's not something to fear. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not a personal disaster. Yep, menopause sucks. It definitely sucks, but gosh, how many women had pregnancies that sucked? And how often did menstruation suck? I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm not saying we are complainers. We're not. We are survivors. And that is the cool thing about aging. I survived. Here I am. I'm 66. I'm here to tell you this story. The passage from my 40s to my 60s almost wiped me out. I was so unprepared for that phase of my life. And I wrote a book about it because I felt like I needed to share my experience. And now that book is out, and I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of sharing all the mistakes I made and telling other women how my mistakes added up to make me resilient, to bring me into my personal power, and to give me confidence in myself, and to make me fearless about aging. I demand to be equal. I want you to demand to be equal too. But step one to fearless aging is to love yourself. Every gray hair, every wrinkle, every blemish, every extra pound you carry, every size up or down your body goes in the process. Love yourself. When you love yourself, other people are going to love you too, and you set an example for all women, young and old. That ageism is wrong. Age is not to be feared, and life in a woman's body makes me strong.
Whether it's now or in the near future, I think the face of America is going to be mixed race. I witnessed a lot of, at the time it was called bigotry, but I witnessed a lot of it, and a lot of it was directed towards me. My father's white, my mom black. I have 3 brothers. I'm the oldest. So I was the pioneer in terms of venturing out into the world, getting in trouble, obstacles about being biracial in an all-white community. Also, the community I grew up in was considered a very progressive community. And although there was that stamp to it, we were the first family to move in, and the reason why we got our house was because my dad was white. Had my dad been black, we wouldn't have even been able to move into the area, although it was progressive. So it was actually a very hard childhood to grow up in, because I was someone that I wasn't very open about what I was going through with my parents. So I never talked to them about the hassles, the name calling, the different adventures that I had around people and how they treated me. I never once told my parents because I was too embarrassed. And because when I was young and when I was little, I didn't realize it was because I was mixed, not at first, or that I had black in me. I thought it was because there was somehow there was something wrong with me. Even though in my heart I was mortified because I was always singled out, and I could see that everyone around me, that wasn't happening to them. Another example is my first grade teacher. There's a class full of kids, and she always would single me out as the kid that you didn't want to be like. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me why. That she would put a dunce cap on me and put me in the corner of the classroom, and then she would point to me and say, "Kids, this is someone you don't want to be like." And I just could not understand that. And I remember I would always stare at her, and I would look at her, and I would think to myself in my head, if you only knew me, you would like me. I didn't really know how to handle it. You know, even dating, all of the people that I grew up with all had boyfriends. I never had anyone look my way. No one was interested. I meet someone as a teenager, right? I meet this guy, and he says to me, "Oh, you know, I have 10 best friends." I said, "I have 10 best friends." He said, "Well, why don't we all get together and go on blind dates?" I said, "That would be great." We all met at the movie theater. We each got introduced to our guy counterpart. Everyone's guy stayed with them. Mine looked at me, left. So I pretended that it was fine, went to the movies, went to dinner, but when I got home, I cried myself to sleep. And like, there's just constant examples like that after a while you just kind of bury, you want to disappear. Although for me, in my spirit, I wanted to live life, and I wanted to have fun, and I wanted to really connect with people. I used to describe myself to myself as a clown, that on the outside I'd be laughing, but on the inside I'd be crying. And every night I cried myself to sleep because there was always some incident to remind me that somehow there was something wrong with me. I ended up being someone that became the ultimate people pleaser. I mean, I even went so far as to steal money from my dad, and I would buy friendships from people so that when they'd see me, they'd smile and want to be around me, because I didn't think that I was worthy or entitled to have a friendship that was legitimate. I mean, people would tell me when I was a teenager, they'd say, it'd be one thing if you were black and only black, or it'd be another thing if you were white, but because you're mixed, it's like you're mixing the races, and that makes it even worse. My experiences sent me certain messages about not being worthy and about not being entitled to even take a breath. Now, my brothers, out of the three brothers, one of my brothers told me, and this as an adult, he felt that there was a lot of racism that was very covert and overt. I had another brother that felt like he had the best of both worlds. I had another brother that told me that he didn't even know he was black until he was in college. So I do think talking to your parents about what you're going through is very important. It's also important to get two perspectives of this particular issue going through life. And you're going to get a different perspective from whoever the white parent is. You're going to get another perspective from whoever the black parent is. But hopefully it'll be presented in such a way that you can resonate with it and then go through the world to be unstoppable. The advice that I would give a biracial girl coming up today is to know that it's going to be a journey of one of love and acceptance of yourself first, no matter what people mirror to you in terms of their own fears, in terms of their own issues around being mixed-raced. That it's going to be a journey, but that you have to know and love yourself and learn. It's something you're going to have to learn. It might not be automatic, but it's something you're going to have to learn. And know that you are going to be someone in the world that spreads love and joy because of who you are. And that you are walking, breathing, feeling unity.
Hi everyone, my name is Angelica and this is my story. Have any of you had the chance to watch Pixar's short film, Pearl? I highly recommend it. In it, a sweet pink ball of yarn goes to work at a male-dominated company called BRO Capital. Now that's a nice play on words from Pixar. On her first day on the job, she walks in with her box of belongings and is quickly treated as an outsider. Her co-workers, all men, all wearing the same power suit, all sporting the same hairstyle, look at her as an oddity. She goes, she sets up her desk, is friendly with her colleagues, but she isn't welcomed. She isn't included, she isn't heard, she isn't seen. In time, Pearl decides to become one of the boys. She knits a power suit, she talks like the boys, she jokes like the boys. Essentially, she becomes one of the boys and temporarily loses herself in order to fit in, to be seen, to be heard. Now, my story is similar, except it doesn't quite happen in the corporate world. For 6 years, I worked at a private all-girls high school. I started as a teacher, became a department chair, and ultimately applied for and was hired on as an associate head of school. I desired to be an associate head of school for several reasons. One being that I loved the school. I loved my colleagues. I loved the girls, my students. Second, I really wanted to be part of what I hoped would be positive change at the school. However, it didn't take long for those hopes to be shattered. You see, I was the only female in the top 3 members of the administration at an all-girls school, and one of 3 females on the entire executive team. Within a matter of months, maybe even weeks, to be honest with you, it was easy to see that what I hoped would be a role in which I could exercise my voice and affect change was actually a role with very little power, very little voice, and what I felt was merely for show. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you see, our head of school and my counterpart, my co-associate head of school, were both males. They were white men from relatively good backgrounds whose experiences were at schools that had much larger endowments and were composed of largely middle class and upper class students. Our school was a small, urban, diverse private school with students on full scholarships or significant scholarships, students from varying income levels and ethnicities and religions, students from mixed families. It was a fact we prided ourselves on, and my own background, in many ways, mirrored that of the students. You see, I came from a lower middle class family. I was the first generation college graduate, and I had a full private school education on academic scholarships. My experience was theirs, and yet that wasn't enough. It was clear early on that my male colleagues appreciated, well, seemingly appreciated what I could bring to the table, but were not about to let me show them or anyone else what it is that I could do. I was left out of crucial conversations. Decisions were made without my input. The women on the executive team were often pitted against each other. And the men, well, they spent their time making decisions at brandy tastings and lunches. Well, on any given day, I operated with about 30% of information that I needed. They managed to somehow make themselves look like the stars, and I tried my best to do what I could for the best of our students, and so did the other members of the executive team. As you can probably imagine, publicly, we had to wear the face of a unified team. Privately, behind closed doors, my voice, though the loudest in the room, remained relatively unheard. And along the way, there were instances and decisions and requests that completely went against my values and the values of the school. There were proposed changes that would have hurt many, and things that from an ethical standpoint I could not defend nor even pretend to defend publicly. In fact, I'm sure not many would. By January, I had decided that I had to become one of the boys to get my points across. But I didn't. That wasn't an option. That wasn't me. That isn't me. That's certainly not the daughter my parents raised. At that time, a few things had also become clear to me. You see, I suddenly recognized that in many ways I was a token female on the administrative team, the token minority at the top, and the token member of the administration that had risen from the ranks of the faculty. A month later, I made the decision to hand in my resignation letter. I wasn't coming back the following academic year. If they didn't hear my voice before then, they sure heard it at that moment. You see, I left without knowing where I was going to be come fall. But it was a decision that I had to make for myself. Now, it was also a blow to both of them and to my colleagues. And it led to a chain reaction of multiple faculty and staff members leaving as a result. And the 2 men, well, they lost their positions over the summer. A few months, actually, a few days after my final day at the school. I'm not happy for them. In some ways, I still believe that they are good men. They simply haven't learned to give a woman a place at the table. And that's what it's like for many men in leadership. But here's what I learned through it all, and the wisdom I now pass along to you. Wisdom that I've passed along to my former students and to really any professional woman out there. Never compromise who you are as a woman. If they are not willing to accept you for who you are, then they are not worth your time and energy. Use your voice often and always. If they don't hear you, speak louder. If they don't see you, find ways to be seen. And if the only time they finally hear you is when you become that voice crying out in the desert, or like in Hunger Games, the Mockingjay, then so be it. But never stop using your voice. Do not compromise your ethics ever. Don't become one of the boys. You are exceptional just being you. And here's one that I try to live by at all times. Be the role model for others that you would want to be for yourself. And remember that women empower women. Women empower women. Women empower women.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I want to start by saying women empower women. Women empower women.
Yay!
Women empower women.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. We
Thank you,
assume
Angelica.
all of you joining us have watched that amazing reel of these fabulous women that are joining us here tonight. And if you have any comments or questions, please just start dropping them in the chat if you're with us on Zoom, and in the comments if you're with us on Facebook. And we're just gonna have a party tonight with these great women. So, so we want to just thank you all for being here. And we always start all of our interviews with this question. So we want to just go around the Zoom room here and ask you each what you're most passionate about. So,
Silence.
Billy.
No silence.
Great Q&A.
Well, it's no surprise because I've been a Passionista for a while, and I'm super passionate about disrupting ideas of aging. I'm 66. I feel like it's the most fabulous time in my life. I'm having a lot of events that I never expected. I'm doing well with a new career that I've started for myself as a writer. I put out a book. I'm coming out with another one, and it's a wild ride at a time when my mom and my grandmothers stayed home. That's what they did. They stayed home. And I'm putting myself out there with the message that this can be really fun and freeing and empowering. And yes, Liz, a renaissance. It's a renaissance.
I love that. I wrote that down.
Yeah.
Empowering renaissance. I don't know. That's beautiful.
Cool.
That's lovely. So,
Well, you know, when
How about you, Joan? Oh, Jesse, you want to go?
No, either way. I
Well, I was going to say, if I was going to take my little red pill, which we talked about before, if I was to take my little red pill, I would say my passion is around being unstoppable and unleashing other people's need to be unstoppable. Mm-hmm. And I, along with my partner, created a nonprofit called Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. And you might go, well, what does that have to do with being unstoppable? But it has to do with self-expression and people being able to be unstoppable and unleashing it, and getting acknowledged for it, and getting education around it, and getting empowerment for it. Because to be any kind of artist, in particular a voice actor today, you are a one-man or one-woman show, and you have to wear many, many hats, including being unstoppable about what you love and what you do. And it's a whole world behind anyone's reasons for not being unstoppable. And I look at kids who are unstoppable, and it's like, that's where I take my cues from. There's no resistance, there's no barriers, there's no judgment of others. All that is by the wayside. So if we can get back to that kernel and that energy and that way of being, the world would be different.
yeah. That's why
So
I
that's my red pill,
I
baby.
love that. That's why I love Girls Inc. so much. And I know they're one of the sponsors, because they actually empower young girls to be unstoppable. They don't use that word,
Really?
but that's really what it is. It's about, inspiring them to be strong and bold and brave and do all the things they
fully
can do.
self-expressed.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
fully
And little girls.
self-expressed.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're going to areas where little girls who really don't have as much wealth or, who mostly are in poverty situations. And they're actually creating girls after school programs. They're creating college programs, math programs. Great. It's really amazing. And they actually teach them self-defense because
really?
a little 10-year-old is needing that. A little 10-year-old girl needs to know how to defend herself physically. Unfortunately, it's a truth. And, once you teach someone self-defense and they have a sense that they can take their own body in hand, that's a big difference too. It's a cool.
That's
part of being unstoppable.
Yeah. And I don't think of it that way, but as a little kid, I can imagine how much, power that empowerment that brings,
Absolutely.
So there.
Mine's connected to what everyone's saying, because I've dedicated my life to public education. And so it's really about empowering the voice and the opportunities for brown and Black girls, and really thinking about what are the conditions, what might adults need, what systematic changes need to happen, what are some historically oppressive structures that exist that we can dismantle and rethink and re-envision. But I really love connecting to student voice. I love hearing stories from the children themselves. And so I know we actively, actually, my department puts together student panels to listen to their voice and to have them tell their stories, and so we can sit in awe of their own humanity and how they've experienced our system. So I'm definitely passionate about that.
Very cool.
What about you, Jesse?
Well, when somebody mentions the red pill, I think it's sort of a no-brainer for me. There's not too many questions I would have about that. But also in terms of what Billy was saying, in the being older. I mean, I didn't transition until I was 44 because I was terrified, and all the things you're talking about. In that community, all the murders that go on of trans people, 4 out of 5 are people of color, and it's the attention needs to be brought to that. And also, as I mentioned in my piece, some people need to be made aware of the effect that they're having on that community specifically, and how that translates out in the real world. I mean, Trump knows what he's doing, but I think somebody like J.K. Rowling doesn't realize that this translates in the real world to rape, murder, what have you.
But how can she not? How can she not realize that? Especially when she makes the stupid statement and then makes it again. It gets the uproar and then makes it again.
I think there's people in this group who are better to speak about the notion of white privilege and money than me. So I'm going to turn that over to somebody else.
Yes, white privilege is dangerous. And there's such impact into the world from it that I don't think people realize it. I'm talking about people that have it. They don't realize that the minute they open their mouth, that is like a pebble thrown into the river, and the ripple effect. They don't realize it to the extent that we do, because it's landing on us. Right?
Yeah, I, as a white woman who has lived my whole life with white privilege, one thing that's kind of interesting is I would say since 2014, since Trayvon Martin, that's the first, well, that's the date on my calendar when my head started to change. I would line that right up with Rodney King in the 1990s. Like it was a seminal event in my life that changed my perspective and made me see things differently. And since then, I feel like it's been a continuous process of education, of learning, and also unlearning, and going back and looking at how I grew up and the schools I went to and the jobs I had and my colleagues and the processes that we were involved in. And now I can see racism everywhere.
Yes.
Because my eyes are open to it, but it took this big social re-education that we've been going through in the last few years through social media, through Black Lives Matter, and really being able to go, oh, wow. And then look back at something that happened to me when I was like, you know, a young child or a teenager, and realize, wow, you know,
Well, what's interesting
I had no idea I
is
had privilege.
Exactly right. It's definitely been distinguished now. There's no
Yeah.
question. That's a household word now where it wasn't before. But it's not only with police brutality. Racism is on all different levels in all different industries and all different facets of life. The you know, the worst is the police brutality, and of course slavery. Everyone knows that, but when it seeps into every single area of your life,
it's very hard to peel the onion and figure out where does it begin, you know? I was 20 something years ago when I was in Washington, D.C. for bar mitzvah. And I think the Holocaust Museum there, I think had just opened or had never been there. And so Susan, my partner, and I went. And at the end of the entire tour, there is a bunch of sort of interactive games that you can do. And one of them had little pictures of people on the wall, and you could move these little people around. And the game, and they were all dressed, they were different races, and they were dressed in different kinds of outfits, like a nurse, a doctor, a business person with a suitcase, a fire person, I almost said man, but it was a fireman, and you know, a white fireman, a black policeman, a nurse, all these different variations. And the game was group these people in twos as quickly as you can, and then press the button. And so you move them around without thinking. You just bloop, 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 press the button, and I did. And then a light goes on, and it says, you grouped these people by race. Why did you do that? I was like, wow, what? I had no idea. And I looked at it, and I had put the black policeman with the black nurse and the white, you know, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know I did it. So that for me was a pretty big eye opener at this late stage in my life, you know, to be like, what the heck?
Right.
Yeah, so that
because
that
it's
made
so
me look
unconscious, because it's so unconscious. And that's what I say about A.K. Rowling. I'm sure part of her issue is she doesn't even realize that it's so seeped in her unconscious.
I wonder.
You know, I wonder too.
I also wonder whether J.K. Rowling feels that way.
I mean, J.K.
That's right. You can misname her. That's just perfect.
That's okay. No, we should just call her AK from now on.
It's like AK. And she needs to take a red pill, damn it. AK needs a red pill.
We have a special guest. Hello,
special guest Susan Feniger.
Everywhere I go.
Susan, what are you most passionate about? Or she can't hear us.
Susan.
She's most passionate about Liz.
Yeah.
See if she says it. Better say what are you most passionate about? Liz.
They want the dating game.
Oh, wait, no. Really?
Nailed it, Liz. I nailed it.
So I have to tell you, as a Passionista, because you asked what our Passionista thing was, and that had been mine. My big education came when I became a marriage and family therapist at the then Gay and Lesbian Center. And of course, it's a nonprofit. So you dealt with everybody from everywhere. And it's like, you go from session to session, your face will get smacked even more each time. And yet it, can't be about you. So you just learn as you go. And I was never the same person, couldn't be the same person after. I sure hope I could, but some people can manage to get through that and keep their privilege intact. And I don't envy them.
Mm-hmm. I don't either. That's true.
Mm-hmm. And Halika, what about you? What are you most passionate about?
I am most passionate about education, and that's in the traditional and the non-traditional sense. Passion in terms of learning, I think, you know, my friends sometimes make fun of me, like, when are you going to stop? But the other thing is, you know, I am an educator, and it's something that I fought so hard not to become at some point. And I just naturally gravitated towards it. But specifically, teaching about matters of social justice, and the structures that we have in place that allow some people to rise up and keep other people down, but also educating about the different kinds of privileges that lead to the different kinds of biases. I know we talk a lot about white privilege, but there is abled privilege, there is male privilege, there is Christian privilege, which is something that I'm interested in exploring because I work at a Catholic university, and I think I have dedicated a lot of my life to educating about the different privileges. But I also value non-traditional education, the education that you cannot find in a classroom, the education that is passed down within the culture, education that we pass down to our friends, to our family, different modes of education. So that really is my passion. And even though I'm not in the classroom right now, I do find different ways to uplift and empower those folks that are in my team, just like I did when I was in the classroom in all girls high school.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Excellent. So now we know that you guys have all watched each other's pieces. Was there anything in anyone's story that triggered something specific for you?
Well, I think every story definitely triggered something, and that something was either a memory from the past that seemed to be like an unfair, unresolved memory from the past, but also my heart went out to every single woman story that I heard. And I put myself in their shoes as they were telling the story, their story. And I just think that the ability to create a story that's from your own life is really your brand. And so that helped me to, when I'm listening to Billy and talking about ageism and menopause, and what women's bodies are capable of, just very easy to put myself in her shoes while she was talking and really living that for that moment. But I also recognize that's her stamp and that's her brand as well. And that's very powerful. People can learn from that. People can transform from that depending on where they are in life. And that's what I got from everyone's story. And it was an honor and a privilege to listen and to hear and to be able to slip into everyone's shoes for a moment.
Can't follow that.
Well, it's not a competition.
And we're done.
We will be scoring you at the end of the Q&A list. It'll be a 10-point scale. We're going to do a poll to see who liked it.
No, but Celine's piece, she's not here, I guess, with us, but that really affected me a lot too, because it's something that a lot of people don't think about. And, you know, I've dealt with chronic pain, but nothing along the lines of what a lot of people are dealing with. And you know, I really just gained such a sense of understanding of all the daily, you know, minor cuts and abrasions that you're going to go through in those circumstances, and how there's a big show of protection for disabled people, and it's so often not true. And that's why that piece, I think, is just so important. But I mean, all of them were great. I agree on that. Amazing,
I thought it was
amazing
interesting when she
selection of
said,
people you got.
I thought it was interesting when she said that it's so difficult for people with disabilities to get jobs, but they make the best employees.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that isn't talked about enough. It's, you know, I was so grateful that she told that story.
One thing that I think each of our stories has in common, and I know this wasn't part of the plan, it's just how life is, but it's our physiology, right? Each one of us told a story about how the body we live in changed us at some point in our life, had a huge effect on our evolution, our self-image, our way of relating to other people, our self-worth, our sense of our career potential, the possibilities for us in the future. Like, are we going to be successful because am I going to be less successful because I'm in this body?
But see, that's taught, that's all taught.
Well, that's it. I mean, that was your thing, and that was Angelica's thing. I mean, all of us touched on that our physiology has been probably equal to our brain power as a determining factor. Sometimes our brain power saves us from our physiology, right? We can think through to a new place, and arrive and go, hey, that, I am not my body, right? And in a way, that I am not my body, that I am this whole human, and I am so much more than this meat sock you see me in here. And I have so much more potential, and you're laying these limitations on me because you're looking at me and thinking you see me because I come in this skin and bones. But I am more than this.
Let me ask
you a question. I need you to see that.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. That really.
I wonder though whether when just came up. I mean, does it bring self-hatred with it? Because when you see,
I think so.
It could be. I mean, you have to learn that, okay, I am not my body, and I love this meat sock.
You come to love it, yes.
I think it definitely comes with the territory.
Because you could hate it. If it keeps me from getting the job, if it keeps me from going to the party and, whatever, it's drinking with the guys or playing golf with the guys and getting that job, or getting access, so.
But I think that's part of the territory of living life and being born on this planet, that there is no one that's fully self-loved, that they love themselves fully. There's always the component of the self-hatred or the self-loathing, right? Always. Even if you had the best childhood, even if you're the most white privileged, it doesn't matter. There's still that component because we're all here on this planet and we're here to learn and grow. And we're also here to, I think, distinguish what stops us. And of course, joy, right? Of course, the red pill, right?
Yeah, and that helps grow through the joy. Interestingly, finding the joy helps you grow through that other stuff, the negative.
Absolutely. And I think we forget.
Yeah.
I think we forget that we can learn through joy. Like, I think you have to be reminded that we can learn and grow and transform through joy, right? And not just through hatred and pain.
Yeah, and finding joy has been that's been about last 8 years of my life, has been figuring out how to find more joy more often. I unfortunately took care of my brother who was HIV positive, and he had dementia. And I took care of him for 15 years. I was his primary caregiver. So that felt, after that was very hard for me to find joy. And I remember in the middle of that, turning to Susan and saying, if I don't learn how to be joyful again in my life, this could kill me. My brother could literally kill me, and I had to make a decision, and I had to learn. I had forgotten. You get so,
that's right,
mired in the day to day, whatever that negative thing is, especially like you said before, these days, it's easy.
Yeah. It's
to
magnified.
to get really mired. That's why I turned the TV off in 2016.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the end.
Why that year?
I
know. In November. Was it in November, Liz? Was it in November?
Yeah.
Psychic.
Yeah. So, because I realized that all of that was adding to my freak out. And I thought,
it eats away. Yeah. It definitely
it's not
eats
good.
away at you.
It's not good for me. I can't feel joy. Every day I turn it on. And even though I love the people I'm watching, it's this, and I'm getting agitated and wound up. And it's like, you know what? Off, gone. And then I was able to actually make my short film, do what I wanted to do, and try to find joy again. And that's been a big help.
So stay away from Twitter is my advice.
All right, no Twitter, no
Twitter.
TV. What else?
What's Twitter?
You know what?
You know,
I
as
think,
you're,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, like in education, I keep saying since March, we've been on this nonstop. Like I feel like we're just all about COVID all of the time and how we're going to educate children and are we going to reopen and is it safe? And it's just like I keep thinking if I was an architect, I would still just be, designing a building. I wouldn't even be thinking about PPE or anything else. And so I found myself cooking the other day and I was actually humming and singing. And I stopped everything. I said, I'm feeling joy.
Wow.
I'm feeling joy right now. So just much
Wow.
back to that is like, when do I find these moments of joy and when do they happen? They just seem to happen. I was enjoying cooking dinner. And so I also have that mindset of, and when you're feeling joy, stop and say, I'm feeling joy.
Acknowledge it. Acknowledge it, right? But we are in a period of time that I think that it's slowed down to the point where even the smallest things now do bring me joy. Even the littlest things I really appreciate now, where before it would be just a blur because I'm always on kind of a treadmill going. But in this time that slowed down so much, I'm able to see things and actually heals things that I normally would have just bypassed.
So slowing down, it could be a good thing.
And that we can carry it into when life goes back to normal.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Connected to that, I keep saying this, like quarantine time has been an amplification of just the normal quotidian sort of routine, much to what you're saying. It's just really making us pay attention. Like I'm going to have half and half in my coffee. I know it's bad for me, but it tastes really good. And I'm just gonna I'm going to enjoy my cup of coffee. That's
What do you do about breathing? I mean, the air's not so good for you either,
You know where else I think, excuse me, the joy can come from is unlearning things that have been drilled into your head.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience at that, but we all do, and it's
totally.
And when you were talking about the body, Billy, I mean, I think that's so important. I mean, obviously it would be for me, but I went through 2 adolescences, and that's not really an exaggeration. Really, you change dramatically when you change those things.
Yes,
Hormones are very, very powerful things. I don't need to tell you that, but for me, I learned a lot. So, but all that stuff. But as you unlearn what you think you can be, maybe there's some joy in that.
I think that's what it's about too. The unlearning. That's to me probably a lot of it is the unlearning of things as opposed to the holding on and got to learn this and got to do it this way. It's about the unlearning. That's the freedom. That's the joy.
Sometimes I will be walking somewhere and I will see a color that I love, or the sky, a very specific color that I love. And I will stop and go, oh, I love that. And just try to experience what loving something or loving a color, what that does. And there's a sense of freedom in it. It's like a balloon that just gets sent into the sky. And I think, to Jesse's point, that can begin the unlearning. That sometimes it's creating space for more to fill, rather than staying where you are and trying to change it. You sometimes can open the lid and let in new stuff. And that can also help, I think, this is my experience anyway, to unlearn some of the negative, That's all I got. Sorry.
No, you're so wonderful, Liz. That was so
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you your $20 I promised you. It's enough.
I really that,
20, I told you 20, that's all.
Okay, so it was wonderful.
All right. Just want to
of unlearning, because there's something that I've been exploring lately, and honestly it's been because of the quarantine, because I think I just have a ton of thinking time now. But also my daughter came out to me, and so that was something that the way I received it and the way my mother received it was very different.
Wow.
And
You have to clarify though,
she's bi.
Okay.
And then the other conversation we also had was about Black Lives Matter, and my mom had a totally different opinion than I did. And so I kept thinking about this space of how do I honor my mom and then also reject some of the things that she has been trying to teach me. So when I actually heard, so that's actually the space I'm trying to create. Like, I'm going to honor, she did her best, but I'm also going to reject the most toxic spaces, because I'm not going to parent that way, or I'm not going to be a woman like that, or I'm not going to grow up in the same way that I was taught, to be quiet, to be meek, to not have a voice, that's respectful. And so, like, I'm really in this space sometimes of navigation of like, ooh, who taught me that? Oh, yeah, I need to reject that. Thank you for this lesson. I don't need it anymore. But it's, so like when I was listening to Billy's story, I have a story in my head about being 45 and my mom still teaching me wrong things about menopause and menstruation. And I was like, I just need to like sit down and like this whole notion of you can't ride a horse. And I'm thinking as a, you know, 10-year-old girl,
why?
Right.
Ride a horse.
Oh, it's huge. You can't go horseback riding when you have
Wait,
your
why?
period. Everyone knows that.
Everyone knows. Or swimming.
I thought it was if you were a virgin, you couldn't go horseback riding.
Well,
you know what? Let's just take horseback riding off the table. Okay? For girls. No horseback riding for girls.
Notion of both, right? This, to honor you because you love me and I thank you, but no, I'm gonna move.
I think, you know, they did the best they could. That's the other thing. You know, I got to that point. I mean, it did take therapy. It wasn't like I got there by myself. But
Totally, Liz.
You know,
totally,
but it was like they did the best they could. And that was with like one hand tied behind their back and blindfolded, you know?
Right. Well,
right?
you know
so
what?
you know,
the guidance that we all have today, they did not have in their time.
Right. That's
I mean, I want to say something. When I heard this, I was horrified. My mother, when they got their period, they had to have rags in there.
Yeah, literally.
I mean,
literally.
come on. You know, I mean, it's just like so
they actually did phenomenal.
As that.
They did phenomenal, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, given what they had to go through.
That's right. And what they had, you know, in terms of knowledge. Look what we have and what we can provide.
Right.
For
And
the
choices.
next generations,
And choices. Yeah, knowledge and choices. My mother delayed getting married. Her younger sister got married before her, which was unheard of. And the pressure was on, and my mother finally got married an old maid at 24.
Oh my God. My mom was an old maid too at 26.
Yeah. So the different choices.
I coach a lot of young people in voice acting and in self-expression and in learning the craft of acting. And I am always blown away and amazed at how brilliant young people are. And I think when I was your age, in a million years, I would not have known that or experienced that or know it as something valid to live your life by. It just kind of blows me away. And then I also think, oh, but I'm part of that reason why the generations know more and can, you know, live life in a slightly different way than we did. I'm part of that reason. Yeah. So because of what we went through, right? And so it's just kind of amazing the information and the things available in life today versus when we were growing up, or even our parents.
Or our parents, right?
And we're constantly, I think, you know, the generations get smarter as it goes on, but we're also part of the reason why.
And I think that's that thing about, you know, they did the best they could is a way of forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, because I think when that forgiveness kind of releases me from the anger of, you know, what do you mean you let the boys win? And how many years of therapy later did I have to unlearn that? But again, she did the best she could. She was trying in her narrow way to protect me. Because think about a girl that never lets the boys win in her era.
Right.
Would have a horrible life. So or that was her way.
Yeah, a boy that doesn't want to win.
Right, exactly.
Way.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
it sounds like the White House today.
So, you know, so that's why that with Fabiola, I mean, I just loved your story, made me cry. It really did. And I have that thing about people who are vulnerable. I have a thing. I notice that if there's a baby around, or if there's a pet around, or a very old person, let's say, being in a wheelchair, being pushed, I'm very suddenly on high alert. Like, are they being cared for properly? There's something about the vulnerability of those people, animals, people, that makes me it's exhausting, I have to say. But when you were talking about the border dude pulling you out of the window, I'm right now, that gives me chills. That is exactly the kind of thing that drives me insane, because the vulnerability, and your mother watching that, it's like, ay, ay, ay. So, that was a really, I'm sorry you had to go through it, and I'm sorry anyone has to go through it, but it was a really harrowing moment, and I think it was a beautiful story.
Thank you. And I think we still need to continue talking about it, because they are definitely, honestly, it's whoever you happen to get while you're trying to cross the border. And I still feel it. Like, even when I travel to even different countries, I see them in uniform, and I'm immediately like, I'm going to line up. I'm going to be quiet. I have my
course.
Yeah.
Of course. Because of the same thing. And so, thank you.
That's not something you can get over.
No.
Like that, right? That is not something you can get
Right.
over. That will always be there. Right? But then again, look how extraordinary you are, in a sense, because of it.
Yeah. And there's lots of potential. I think about, again, because I'm in San Diego, it's a border town. There's a lot of students that cross the border that are, American citizens that, something happens where their parents lose a job, and they have to move back because it's less expensive to live. There's a lot of people, actually students of ours, that are missing because they had to move to Mexico to quarantine. And so we're actually actively trying to find ways to reunite them with education so that they can continue receiving their education. But that's a totally different life that we don't talk about. And that's just in California. But, there's a lot of other states also border where children, it's very fluid. They just come in and out.
Yeah. What I'm reminded of is that, how peacock feathers are made? By peacocks ingesting thorns. Oh. They ingest thorns, and look at the beautiful feathers it creates because of it. So I often go to that image when I think about my past, or when I'm working something out in the present, that, somehow that's part of it. That's not, unfortunately, not something to be afraid of, although it can be frightening, of course. But I'm saying, like, that's also why everyone on here is absolutely beautiful, because you've gone through something unbelievably painful. But it also created the peacock feathers.
The sort of message embedded in the peacock feathers is that every step we take is the path we make into the future. And every step counts, and every step you take is a choice. And all your choices add up to who you are. There was no way for all of us to get to this moment here now on Zoom, on Facebook Live, having told our stories, our entertaining, but maybe also heartbreaking or insightful or profound stories.
Right.
We got to the moment by making the choices that we made to get here. And there was no other path to this moment than the path we took. So it was everything you did every step of the way that got you to right here, right now. And right here, right now, if you're amazing, which you are, then you have to look at the path you took to get here. And that's just what was necessary. That's just what you needed.
Yeah. And I think also there is a magnificence in women that I don't think we allow ourselves to hear. Yeah. Because sometimes I think, as much as we were complaining about periods and things like that, the idea that our bodies know exactly what to do. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, incredible, magnificent. And even the fact that you cut yourself, and if you're lucky enough that you don't have a disease, you scab. I mean, our bodies are incredible if we get out of the way. and we, the spirit that's within them is magnificent. And I don't mean just us. I mean, we're pretty cool too. But I'm talking about everyone who's watching us, everyone out there, every woman we meet. I was, sometimes I just sit and listen to sometimes women having lunch and talking. I'm just so in love with women. They're amazing.
Amazing.
There's so much depth and feeling and emotion and
And
willingness.
intuition and intuition
and intimacy.
Psychicness. Yeah.
I'm telling you, we're cool. And recognizing that, but that plays off of, Billy, what you were saying, really. It's like, yes, recognizing that I don't love every single thing I'm going through right now, but guess what?
Right.
I am pretty great, and I love who I am.
Yeah.
And I better own it, because everything that I got, that I had to do to get here, to own it with pride.
Yeah.
Because we're again, that word, we're magnificent. And that's something to walk out the door with every day,
And the honor of even being considered part of a group like this is so powerful and life changing. For me, I mean, it's something that we're taught that can't happen, that won't happen.
Right.
You're wrong about that. Everybody wants to focus on the tiny percentage of trans people that detransition. It's like, why do you think they detransition? It's not because they're not trans or they don't know who they are. It's a therapist that we knew had this great term. She said, instead of what they used to call gender identity disorder, she said it should be called OPD. And we're like, what's that? She goes, other people's disorder. That's what sends you back. That is what sends you back. And it doesn't just apply to us. It applies to everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes. Other people's perceptions, other people's issues, absolutely, that we unfortunately take on like it's true.
Right.
Right?
Going back to
amazing.
Love you guys.
Going back to what Billy said, I think if we own our stories, if we recognize they're part of us, if we recognize that all those stories, good or bad, happy, sad, make us who we are, we can then take those stories, share them like we did right now, and we recognize that they will potentially uplift another woman or someone else. Or a generation.
Yeah.
And one of the joys that I had in teaching at an all-girls school is that at an all-girls school, we teach them to lift their voice, right? To not be brought down, to make sure that they are becoming that loudest voice in the room. But being able to share my story with them as a first-generation college graduate, as a Latina, as a woman of color, to go into that classroom every day and say, you can do this too, that is also something that uplifts them. And it's not an easy road for any of us, really.
No.
But it uplifts them. And I see my students now, and some of them are going to medical school and dental school, and some of them are educators. And it's the most beautiful thing to see what they've grown into. And when I said women empower women, I meant it in two ways, that we do truly empower each other. I would not have survived the story that I talked about had it not been for amazing women that were absolutely supportive of me and saw what I was going through and empowered me to make sure it wasn't bringing me down. But it was also a call. It was also a call for women to empower women, to choose to tell our story, and to not hide it.
Right. Well, you're actively leaving a legacy, and you're lucky enough to see the results already. When you say some of them are becoming dentists, some of your students are becoming doctors, educators.
Emerging.
I mean, you're actually leaving your legacy, but you're seeing the results of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, all of you who are
powerful.
teachers, it's so amazing. I've taught 2 classes, and I think I've been asked to teach another one. All 3 would be human sexuality. And, I think to have it, I would say, I mean, even if it wasn't me, it's pretty cool to have a trans person teach.
Totally. That's actually revolutionary. That is revolutionary.
And I read, and you're in a real position of privilege when you do that, because these are graduate psychology students going for an MA, right? And they have to write everything about their own lives. And when you get those papers, you feel like, I don't know that I've ever felt a kind of an honor like that for all students, but particularly to be reading women's stories like that, because that was an education. And I mean, that felt like a privilege, but one that, came with the territory rather than necessarily being completely unearned. but it was, that to me was just mind-boggling. I would have paid them to let me teach it.
Don't say that out loud.
No.
Don't edit that out.
Give them any ideas. Don't give them any ideas.
We erased that from the transcript. Yeah, they already pretty much take advantage of all that. Well, in Antioch.
We do have a question from the audience. How do you feel about books written by 30-something women like Girls Stop Apologizing?
I've never read any 30-something. I seem to read about, I read a lot of women's books, but they seem to be women with this wisdom in their 50s, 60s, 70s. That's what I tend to. I would love to read a 30-something-year-old, so maybe some suggestions.
Well, wait, is that a specific book?
It's a specific book, Girls Stop Apologizing.
And what is it? Is
Okay.
that just about like how to stop apologizing? Is it what it sounds like? I haven't read it.
I don't know. Whoever it's an anonymous comment. So if you have any more information about the book, let
Yeah,
us
because
know,
before I pontificate, I would like to know. I start knowing now. Just go ahead and talk.
I guess that's our assignment for next time.
We'll all read it and we'll come back and we'll talk.
That's a great idea.
I'm trying to figure out if is it the age of the writer that is the issue that they're talking about, or is
I
it
do
the topic?
agree. We should stop apologizing.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
so,
but
Sounds
that
like
was
I like the spirit of it.
a specific question, though.
A consciousness, whoever the 30-something ones that wrote it may have had a mother in our generation that, enlightened them. So now they've embodied that and they've written this book. That would be interesting to read, actually, because a lot of women in the younger women don't carry what we did in our lives based on how society viewed us.
And also, they may not want to hear from us. That whole thing, right?
Sure.
About like feminism has to start over every generation.
And we don't want to be seen as being ageist.
True.
So
I'm 30-something and I want to hear from you.
There you go. See?
No, I'd be
vice
very
versa.
interested.
Well,
I'd be very interested.
I think to the point of, it's kind of a trope, women apologizing when they say something smart, like I say, something smart and they go, oh, I'm sorry, or, oh, excuse me, or I don't know, but maybe, and qualify it to soften it instead of having the courage of our convictions and the confidence in ourselves and the belief in ourselves. And also, hey, the willingness to be wrong, right?
Yeah, big deal. The sky's not
the
going to
willingness
fall.
to be wrong. And just stand up and be who you are and don't feel like you have to equivocate or soften it or make yourself like a little more feminine, or don't come on so strong, or don't be a bitch, God forbid.
Yeah, since I transitioned, I've never been treated so stupid. It's like when people don't know, they're kind of like, oh yeah, it's like suddenly these people are talking down to me, and of course my experience is sort of saying, what are you doing? But then I realize where that comes from,
and also it's about taking a risk. I mean, every time you open your mouth, in a sense, you're taking a risk, right? So that's part of the equation as well. And not everyone's willing to do that. And in particular, women. And for the very reason, and it's for one of the very reasons what you said. And that's because women are treated like they're stupid. Mm-hmm. It's just like the general atmosphere. It's not like any particular man, but the general atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And I also think women may, on some level, agree with that and also treat each other that way as well. And it's, breaking that chain or that tradition.
Yes. Many years ago, Lily Tomlin, part of her act was, one of her little things was where she said, when a man walks up to four women sitting in a bar and says, what are you all doing here by yourself? I mean, it's like, it's just, these are the things we have to get through. And
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
the best thing, in my opinion, like in the old days, it was ignore him. But that doesn't change anything. And then the best thing
No.
would be to educate him in a way that doesn't hurt his ego, so that he doesn't call you a bitch and, whatever. But all of that, even having to work around the male ego, is also extra added energy and work that men
And
don't have to
also,
go through.
we're psychic, but we're not that psychic, It's like,
I've noticed my work has this really nice, beautiful badge with your name and your title and your degree. And I've noticed that even when I'm not working, if I'm going to enter a space where I know they don't know who I am, I tend to leave it on. And I even sometimes leave it on. Like when I go to the bank, I sometimes leave it on. And I know, like, I start to think about, like, where am I entering? What kind of respect am I seeking? Do I need? And do I leave on my name badge or not? And I, forget to take off my name badge. For those reasons, because there's been lots of comments that are made, and, so I'm just like, okay, I'm going to leave on my name badge, and it'll be
but see, that's a risk by not leaving it on and going into any place, any space, and not feeling like, I guess you're going to be treated a certain way, right? But that would be a risk, not wearing it.
Definitely a risk.
And seeing where you're at, right?
No, I put lipstick in the same category. It's like your shield, right? You put that name badge out there and it says, I am educated, I am smart, you must respect me. And, older generation, another world, different kinds of competition, different ways of making yourself feel worthy. And you just think like about lipstick. And I remember my mom could not go out of the house without lipstick, that she felt like she wasn't properly presented without lipstick.
Exactly.
And now, just in the last couple of years, since I really started working social media and being more physically visible, hey, not for nothing, but it's like the name badge. It's
wait, 1 second, wait, guys, wait.
Right, there you go. See? There you go. It's like, it's a shield. It's a way of presenting yourself that you feel like somehow conveys something that you identify with. And I want people to pay attention to me. So I try to make myself look a way that will gather eyeballs. And again, you and the badge and your colleagues, and it's at work, and you just wish people would see you're a genius and a wonderful person, and that you wouldn't need a name badge with a credential on it that elevates you in their eyes. But gosh,
I'm gonna go past the lipstick. I'm gonna add to that. It's always red lipstick, right?
Yeah.
The same red lipstick.
I'm learning so much about how to be a woman tonight.
I'm telling you.
The breakthrough would be, okay, wear the lipstick, but now wear completely different shade that you normally would not go to for the emotional blanket or self-protection. That would be a risk.
That feels very risky to me.
Yeah,
very
risky. Right?
Yeah, very
so that might be worth trying.
I'm wondering about where I'm complicit in all of this, because like one of my favorite things is to see AOC with red lipstick and big gold hoops.
Yes.
I love hoops. I love hoops.
But why is that a favorite? Fabiola,
that's actually what I'm trying to figure out. Like, why is that? And am I now complicit in saying, we should be wearing red lipstick and big hoops? Like, I'm just I don't know. I haven't.
But don't you think that has to do with it being okay to be a woman in a male space? Like when I worked at Warner Brothers, and I was one of the only women ever at the table in a meeting, my goal every day was to go into work and be considered one of the guys and to not feel like a woman at all. If the guys made a joke, an off-color joke, and they apologized to me, I was mortified. I wasn't offended by the joke. I was embarrassed, because now all of a sudden everybody was reminded that I was the woman in the room and I was uncomfortable. So for me, with someone like AOC, it's like she is in that male-dominated world where you are supposed to wear a dress. You can't wear pants on the floor, but you're not supposed to go in there and wear lipstick and be a girl and be feminine. And so for me, when I see her, that's why I like that. Because it's like she's going in there and reminding them that she's owning a woman, and she's owning it, and it makes them all uncomfortable to the point where they're calling her bad names on the steps
all the time,
you know, in front of reporters, calling her out. And she's saying, "Screw you."
Didn't we love her response? Her response.
Oh my God, yes.
Loved it.
Oh my God.
She's so badass.
She is no joke. She's a Libra. She is a Libra.
Yeah.
I'm a Libra. I recognize the Libra.
I'm a Libra. There you go.
There you go. I hate to say this, but
no. La 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 la.
We can stay. I'll stay all night. I love you all. We haven't had a lot of questions from the audience, but we've had a ton of comments that I encourage you all to go back and read, because they're basically all talking about how amazing you all are and how moved they were and how much they love your red lipstick. And so I do encourage you guys, you lovely women, to go to our Facebook page later and read what people have to say to you and comment back if you have the time and feel the urge to do that. And I really do think we should all get that book, and we should reconvene and have another chat.
And stop apologizing.
If you're up for it, we'll get you the info and we'll figure out a time. Because when Nancy and I planned the Storyteller event and we sat down to pick the women that we wanted to be involved, many of you were immediately, women came to mind, and some of you were women that we didn't know yet, but are so grateful that we have come to know, and so grateful that you shared your stories. But we knew that this night would be exactly what you made it, and it was so much fun. We love you all. We're so glad now that you know each other, and anybody who wants anybody else's email address.
So when's the next meeting?
Anytime you want. We'll send out an email. We'll send out a group email to everybody, and you can reconvene. And Billy is due for a trip to LA soon, so we can all get together. And we know Joan comes out, so maybe we can get our Northern and Southern California girls to come in too. And we can
that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
You guys, thank you so much, Amy and
Nancy. Thank you. Yeah,
for doing
you
this.
Guys are
really appreciate it.
Powerful. Thank you, and thank you for putting this together.
Yes,
it's really been extraordinary seeing it on Facebook and seeing how things have come together, and the branding is top notch.
I give all the credit to Nancy for that.
Top notch.
She is a genius.
Both of you are great.
I just want to say something funny. Susan Feniger from the next room just typed in, "Come eat at Socolo," at her restaurant in Santa Monica.
Yes, we will. We'll have our in-person meeting at Socolo.
So you can get rid of
plan.
It looks like she's not here, but really she's here all the time.
Carrying her heart.
I've been fangirling about it since I saw you. I was like, I love her. I've made.
Are you coming? Are you coming to?
Like, I would love to meet her. Yeah.
Come on down. Come on down.
Fabiola, she does not disappoint. She is amazing.
Now
as
you
you
all
think she is.
You all have an in now. Okay.
And we were lucky enough to actually go to their home and eat Susan Feniger made food, and it was
really.
I dream about it.
And we only charged them a little bit.
Worth every penny. I'd pay it again. I'd pay double.
Yeah, but we get group discounts, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
Or we can donate to your favorite charity, whatever you want.
All right.
Let's
think about that.
And Susan does have favorite charities, and those charities are the LA LGBTQ Center, right? And the Scleroderma, is I'm saying it right?
Scleroderma Research Foundation.
Right, Scleroderma Research Foundation. Yep.
So those are Susan's charities, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yep.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Well, ladies, we cannot thank you enough. Oh,
Did
I
you
said
just call us
ladies.
ladies.
I'm sorry, Liz. See,
Have
those
you
things
learned-
that are
have you
things that are
learned
in
nothing?
game. I've learned absolutely nothing. I have to start
I'd
again.
rather be called Toots. I'd rather be called Toots, okay?
I love
Toots.
You know what? I'd rather be called Chick. I swear to God.
I do.
Big
I would
chicks.
too. I would too.
I
Right?
can live with that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to call
like
you anything.
Rob.
I'm just going to say thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
We love each and every one of you.
Wow.
Thank you.
See you later, you guys.
Nice meeting you all.
It was great. Bye-bye.
I don't want to say goodbye.
I know. You hang
Take
up
care.
first. No, you hang.
You hang
You
up.
hang up
No,
first.
you hang on. You hang on.